Well, swimming's world governing body, Fina, which stands for the Fédération Internationale de Natation, has voted to ban the participation of transgender athletes in elite level competition if they have undergone male puberty during an extraordinary General Congress meeting in Budapest. Under the decision, male to female athletes will be ineligible for elite women's competitions if they have not completed their transition by the age of 12. Fina will also institute a committee to work on establishing a third open category for participation in future elite-level competitions. Joining me now to discuss this is Tasmanian Liberal Senator Claire Chandler. Claire, it's great to see you. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Rowan. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, this is a big day. As you know, so Fina has voted to effectively restrict trans athletes from competing in women's events. Both yourself and the woman who I believe should have been your colleague in Parliament, Catherine Deves, bravely fought for this very outcome for a long time. So I'm going to say, first of all, congratulations. Secondly, have you been vindicated, and have your critics, of which there were many, been suitably rebuked?
Well, Rowan, I think that this is an incredibly historic day for women's sport, both in Australia and around the world, because finally we have a peak sporting body that has taken a stand and said that we must protect fairness in women's sport. And that's exactly what Fina has done in undertaking the process that they have, consulting with athletes, listening to the scientists, understanding all of the concerns that are shared by so many fair-minded Australians that if we allow biological males to compete in women's sport, then that will be both unfair and in contact sports unsafe for those women involved. So yes, I'm incredibly excited to see this outcome from Fina, and I think absolutely it does reflect quite poorly on all of the people, the bureaucrats, the commentators in the media, some politicians that have been saying for the last 3 years that this isn't something that anyone's worried about, that this isn't an issue that women should even be talking about.
Well, you were right at the forefront. You're very modest because you took a massive amount of flack, as indeed did Catherine Deves, personal insults and so on. So again, I repeat, congratulations to you for being brave, because people want brave politicians. That's what they want, people who will represent them on issues that they care about. Now, in this instance, the whole idea of the decision is to protect the equality for women in sport. But what did you make of this kind of little asterisk, this bizarre 12-year-old ruling, namely that boys who transition under the age of 12 can compete, which Fina's president, Hussein al-Muslim, he's saying, oh, this isn't, we're not trying to encourage people to transition by 12, but surely isn't there a risk that this is exactly what will happen? You'll have mums and dads saying, quick, quick, Johnny, go and, you're 11 now, go and transition, because otherwise you won't be able to win the Olympics. Am I being, is this likely to happen?
Oh, look, I think I'll take the comments from the Fina president on face value there, Rowan. We know that it is from the science that it's going through male puberty that creates that that disparity and that unfairness and that advantage in males over females. So I think the ruling here is not about encouraging transition at any point in a child or in an adult's lifetime. It's just saying that that is the event that creates the unfairness and the advantage, and that's why that's going to be the ruling line, I suppose.
The interesting thing, Claire, of course, though, is that this 12-year-old ruling does very categorically now, from an official sporting body, say that if you have gone through puberty, doesn't matter what else you do later on in life, you have that extra advantage, and you can never remove it with puberty blockers or anything else. You have a physical inbuilt advantage. So that's a clear line drawn in the sand against the entire kind of militant transgender lobby who would tell you you, no, that's not the case. There's also talk, Claire, of an open competition category. This was always, I think, your and Catherine Deeves' position that, this kind of makes sense. It's the logical sense. What was your response to this open third category for transgender, well, men and women, though I doubt we'll see many transgender, I always get it the wrong way around, transgender men, i.e. women who became men, competing in this, but maybe we will. What do you think?
Well, I think it's really important to have that category there, and you're right, Rowan, this is something that I've advocated for quite some time, because none of the work that I've undertaken and the advocacy that I've undertaken has been about banning anybody from participating in sport. All it was about doing was ensuring that women, who we know have fought for generations to have the right to compete on a fair and even playing field, continue to have that right, and that it's up to sports to look at other options for including people that may not necessarily fit that categorisation or that binary as it's seen. So I think that this is a really promising development, and I look forward to seeing how Swimming Australia decides to implement the policy that Fina has come up with at the elite level of competition in Australia, right down to the community level, because I have always firmly been of the belief that we need to have sport for women and girls right down to that community level, because that's where we know the athletes of tomorrow are coming from.
Well, I think you're right. I think the fight is going to go on. We've already seen, already it's polarising. Obviously, there will be reactions to this. We've had Emily Seebohm and others come up. Kate Campbell made a brilliant speech before the Fina event, spelling out why we needed this. But is the fight just beginning? And this is at the elite level. And you're right. Will the fight now take place at the less elite level, the community level?
Well, I think the fight is absolutely just beginning, Rowan, and now the onus really is on our other international peak sporting bodies and indeed our national peak sporting bodies in Australia to undertake a process like what Fina has done, to listen to the concerns of female athletes, to not brush them away or not say that you're bigoted just because you say that you think that women's sport should be for females. All of these sports now need to be looking very closely at what's happening within their sports from the community level right up to the elite level, and I think coming up with policies that are, broadly speaking, reflective of what Fina's come up with. It will be very interesting to see how all of our sporting bodies react to this going forward, because we know that Sport Australia, our nation's peak sporting body, 3 or so years ago now, when they undertook this same process, apparently to come up with a set of guidelines that would promote inclusion, instead consulted behind closed doors with activists and lawyers who were giving them the information or giving them the views that they wanted to hear, and they came up with a set of guidelines that said exactly the opposite to what this very thorough process that Fina has gone through has produced.
Well, Claire Chandler, Senator Claire Chandler, let me just say, I imagine you never, or you may have done, seen yourself in this league, but I'm going to nominate you and Catherine Deeves to be up there with Germaine Greer and Emily Pankhurst and others. I think this is one of the most significant things that's happened for feminism and for women in decades, probably since The Female Eunuch by Germaine Greer. Well done. You've suffered enormous slings and arrows that I'm sure we don't know the depths of it, the attacks on you and on Catherine. I say congratulations, an amazing fight by both of you, and well done, and more power to the two of you. Thanks, Claire.
Thanks, Rowan.
Claire Chandler.